Story 1. When I was 19, I found employment with a company that dispatched workers to remote regions of Australia for various labor-intensive tasks. Essentially, you'd inform them of your availability, and they'd assign you to a rural farm for a few weeks where you'd assist with whatever chores were needed. It was demanding work, often involving long hours, but the pay was decent, and it could be enjoyable if you meshed well with your fellow workers. During that period, I was stationed at a vast property which covered an expanse similar to the size of a U.S. state. Situated approximately 9 hours away from Sydney City, the property was nestled about 40 minutes from the nearest town, truly isolated from civilization. My assignment involved bushland clearance alongside 3 other urban youths, under the supervision of our boss, a man named Gregory, who owned the farm. He was easygoing and treated us well, which made the scorching summer days and arduous tasks more bearable. One particularly sweltering day, with temperatures soaring to around 38 degrees Celsius, Gregory decided to grant us the afternoon off. He mentioned knowing of a secluded waterhole about a 25-minute drive north of the farm. While I eagerly anticipated a refreshing swim, my companions opted for a laid-back afternoon of relaxation. Gregory and I hopped into one of the work trucks and embarked on the journey across the sprawling property. As we traversed the vast, desolate landscape, conversation was sparse, with Gregory mostly silent behind the wheel. Suddenly, his demeanor shifted as he nudged me and gestured toward an unusual sight, a large, azure structure amidst the otherwise drab surroundings. Such vivid colors stood out starkly against the monotonous backdrop, piquing our curiosity. We redirected our course towards the enigmatic object. Approaching closer, we discerned that it was a massive blue shipping container inexplicably situated in the middle of nowhere. Gregory appeared puzzled, expressing bewilderment at its presence, as he hadn't noticed it during his previous travels through the area. Intrigued, albeit apprehensive, we halted the truck approximately 100 meters away. Despite my reservations, Gregory resolved to investigate, asserting his authority as the landowner. Upon closer inspection, the scene grew increasingly surreal. A diesel generator hummed loudly nearby, while motion-activated CCTV cameras tracked our movements. Despite the evident security measures, a mere padlock secured the container's entrance. Armed with bolt cutters, Gregory disregarded any caution and forcibly gained access. Stepping inside, we were greeted by a rush of cool air, a welcome relief from the oppressive heat. Illuminated by blinking LEDs, the interior revealed a cluttered yet sophisticated office setup, replete with computer equipment and storage containers. Despite our limited technological prowess, we attempted to decipher the purpose behind this clandestine setup. After futilely scouring the computers for clues, I mustered the courage to investigate the adjacent storage boxes. What I discovered within turned my stomach a trove of explicit and disturbing materials meticulously organized within folders. Overcome with disgust and dread, I implored Gregory to evacuate immediately. Returning to the farmstead, we were compelled to contact the authorities, albeit hindered by the absence of mobile reception. By the time the police arrived, the container had been engulfed in flames, likely an attempt to eradicate any evidence. Despite the subsequent investigation by federal authorities, little was uncovered, and the perpetrators remained elusive. Years later, the container still stands as a haunting reminder of that unsettling encounter, its presence a testament to the inexplicable events that transpired in the remote Australian outback. Story 2. Get ready for this chilling story. When I first heard it, I was so spooked. I ran to my mom's room and demanded she check under the bed for monsters, like a total scaredy pants. In September 2010, my partner Mark, his closest friend Ben, my bestie Sarah, and I returned to our hometown for our final year of college after spending the summer in London. It was an exhilarating experience, exploring such a vibrant city. We stopped at a bed and breakfast halfway on our journey home, planning to resume the trip around 6 p.m. However, we discovered that someone had damaged the right-wing mirror of our car, which was a birthday gift from my dad. I was livid. We asked the landlady if she knew where we could find a replacement or a temporary fix. She vaguely mentioned a makeshift scrapyard she had passed by before and drew us a rough map. Despite my doubts about her directions, we ventured into increasingly desolate surroundings. Just as we were about to abandon the search due to safety concerns, Mark spotted a handwritten sign directing us to a nearby cafe and car spares. We followed the sign to a secluded spot surrounded by forests, where a small cream-colored building with cafe painted on the roof stood alongside a caravan and a pile of car parts. We approached cautiously, the only visitors in sight. As we searched through the metal heap, Tony suggested taking an old mirror, but I insisted on paying for it. Upon knocking on the door, a tough-looking man greeted us with a forced smile. He seemed tired but invited us in, offering sandwiches. I declined, feeling uncomfortable with his sexist remarks. The situation escalated when he began asking intrusive questions, making us uneasy. Suddenly, Sarah screamed, and we rushed outside to find one of the men making unwanted advances towards her. As we fled, we discovered nails arranged around our car tire, indicating malicious intent. We decided to leave immediately, but as Tony closed the door, we saw the man emerge from the house with a rifle in hand. In a panic, I started the car and sped away, leaving the scrapyard behind. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of the motorway. To this day, the incident haunts me, and I avoid traveling by car whenever possible, especially through secluded areas. Story 3. Residing in a town of approximately 11,000 residents in rural Wisconsin, I found myself there not by choice, but due to a job opportunity. However, plans were in motion for a move once I secured a better position. On this particular day, I was en route to my employer's house. He currently operates the company from his basement until a new office space is established. As I drove, I encountered a troubling situation: a beat-up blue car tailgating me, driven by a bald white man. My Kia Soul's flat back end made it evident when a vehicle was too close, prompting me to tap my brakes. Irritated by his proximity, I slowed down, which elicited a honk from him. Unfazed, I responded with a gesture before reducing my speed. Despite ample opportunities to overtake me on the country road, he remained inches from my bumper at 50 miles per hour. Feeling uneasy in this isolated setting, I feigned taking a photo of him with my cell phone and pretended to call 911. Curious to see his reaction, I diverted from my route to test if he would follow. To my dismay, he trailed me through turns and a roundabout, confirming my suspicions that he was deliberately intimidating me. Deciding to prioritize my safety over punctuality, I opted to drive to the police station. Much to my alarm, he parked beside me, blocking my exit and maintaining an unsettling silence. Despite his seemingly harmless appearance, my instincts urged caution, especially considering my background in behavior analysis. As I dialed 911, he briefly lowered his window, said nothing, then abruptly departed. I promptly informed the officer on duty of the incident, although I failed to note his license plate in the heat of the moment. The police officer acknowledged a recent uptick in complaints about tailgaters, including reports involving a blue car. I provided a statement and received information about victim services as a precaution. Returning to my car later, I discovered a chilling note on the windshield, a simple smiley face, reminiscent of a scene from a horror movie. Despite the officer's reassurances and the community's supportive atmosphere, I remained vigilant, informing my fiancé of safety measures. I resolved to alert authorities immediately if I encountered the individual again and devised a plan to ensure my safety when traveling alone. Story 4. About 16 years ago, at the age of 12, I found myself at a summer camp organized by my scout troop. Unlike traditional setups, ours included both boys and girls, reflecting the progressive nature of scouting in Spain. One of the camp's highlights was the Raid, a thrilling adventure into the Pyrenees, a stunning mountain range in the northeast of Spain. Our plan was ambitious 3 days of trekking with 2 nights spent away from the campsite. In our group of 15 youngsters aged between 12 and 14, we were well prepared with essential survival skills, including map reading, shelter building, and water sourcing. With no adult supervision, a rarity these days, we embarked on our journey. Our destination for the first day was a mountain just shy of 10,000 feet, crowned by a glacial lake. As the sun began to set, we realized we wouldn't reach the lake before dark. Opting for caution, we erected a shelter and prepared dinner, reveling in the picturesque mountain landscape. With ample time before sunset, a smaller group set off to fetch water and clean dishes, equipped with torches for the journey back. Nightfall descended as we retraced our steps to the shelter. Suddenly, one of my friends spotted something unfamiliar by the trail of broken reflector pole from the road. Instantly, our carefree mood shifted to apprehension. Hastening back to camp, we shared our unsettling discovery with the others, igniting fear among the group. Who could be lurking in the mountains with us, and for what purpose? 2 older boys, both 14, volunteered to investigate, armed with a torch, knife, and whistle for communication. Left behind in the shelter, we huddled together, our makeshift refuge offering little comfort. Fear permeated the air, stifling any attempts at reassurance. Desperate to alleviate the tension, one of the girls suggested singing, a feeble attempt to distract ourselves from our mounting anxiety. As we sang softly, the shrill sound of a whistle shattered the night, sending us into a frenzy. Racing towards the shelter, our friends arrived breathless and agitated, reporting a disturbing sight of bloodied stick they had stumbled upon. Panic engulfed us, tears mingling with prayers as we awaited their return. When they reappeared, relief flooded over us as they dismissed the incident as a misunderstanding involving a park ranger and a rabbit hunt gone awry. Despite their assurances, lingering doubts nagged at us. Sensing our unease, the older boys proposed confronting the supposed ranger, a decision that only fueled our fears. With each passing moment, our dread intensified, exacerbated by the realization that the story didn't add up. Suspicions grew, and we braced ourselves for a potential confrontation. Minutes stretched into hours as we waited in tense silence, knives clutched tightly in trembling hands. Then, the piercing sound of running footsteps shattered the stillness, followed by terrified screams. Adrenaline surged through us as we prepared for the worst, our knives poised for defense. But to our astonishment, our camp leaders emerged from the darkness, doubling over with laughter at our expense. Their prank, intended as harmless fun, had spiraled out of control, plunging us into a night of terror. As they attempted to apologize, we remained unmoved, grappling with a mix of anger and relief. Reluctantly, we allowed them to stay the night, their presence offering a modicum of reassurance in the wake of their reckless joke. In the aftermath, trust shattered, it took months for us to forgive and forget. Though the ordeal is now a distant memory, its impact lingers, a stark reminder of the thin line between humor and harm. As I reflect on that harrowing night, I can't help but wonder what might have transpired if circumstances had taken a darker turn. In a world where headlines often reflect the worst of humanity, our close encounter serves as a sobering reminder of the fragility of trust and the enduring power of fear. Story 5. Back in my early 20s, I had a friend whose father struggled with alcoholism and psychosis. Occasionally, we'd visit him together in a secluded coastal town, despite the eerie vibe surrounding him. One night during such a visit, my friend's father erupted into a drunken rage and kicked us out. It was well past midnight, with no car at our disposal. His house lay about 4 kilometers outside town, reachable only via a desolate dirt road. With no mobile phones back then, our only option was to trek to the town's telephone booth. As we trudged down the dirt road, my friend's drunken lamentations filled the air, adding to the tense atmosphere. Upon reaching the phone booth, I dialed my parents, who agreed to come fetch us despite the late hour. As we sat on the bench awaiting their arrival, a van pulled up behind us, sending shivers down my spine. 2 men sat in the front seats, their gaze fixed on us, while others lurked in the back. The isolation of our surroundings intensified our vulnerability. As the men's conversation grew louder, I realized with horror their intentions to abduct and harm us. Paralyzed by fear, I struggled to alert my friend to the danger. Just when despair threatened to engulf us, my friend's father unexpectedly arrived, a rare display of compassion overcoming his usual gruff demeanor. His presence momentarily distracted the men in the van, allowing us to flee to safety. However, our relief was short-lived as the van began tailing us, spewing threats all the while. Despite my attempts to convey the severity of the situation, my friend's father brushed it off, opting to simply let the van pass. Their menacing presence persisted, casting a shadow of dread over us until they finally departed. The ordeal left an indelible mark on me, instilling a deep-seated fear and an unwavering protectiveness over my loved ones. While I may appear overly cautious, I'd rather err on the side of caution than risk falling prey to the countless dangers lurking in the shadows. Story 6. Gather round for this bone-chilling tale. When I first heard it, I was so scared, I triple-checked all the locks and hid under my blanket like a scaredy cat. I used to reside in a neighborhood on the outskirts of Memphis, Tennessee, bordering what some might dub as the sketchier part of town. There was also an adjacent area that felt quite secluded and desolate, near the industrial park close to Raleigh. I was around 8 years old at the time, accompanied by my sister, who was 5 years older. Occasionally, we'd take walks together, exploring the vicinity. One day, we ventured farther than usual, reaching the back of the housing division, where the landscape turned grim and barren for such an urban setting. We found ourselves walking alongside the train tracks, amidst dry, tanned grass poking through the gravel and heaps of discarded debris littering the area. Stray dogs were a common sight, but human activity was scarce. As we strolled, chatting and idly tossing rocks, I noticed peculiar movement beyond the tree line, about 40 feet ahead at my 11 o'clock position. I alerted my sister, and as we approached, the movement materialized into the form of a mime. Yes, a mime, in the middle of nowhere, nestled among the trees and thick, withered vines that bordered the wooded area. Clad in a black striped shirt and pants, with a painted face and exaggerated expressions, he seemed to beckon us with his gestures, as if trying to lure us deeper into the woods where he lurked. It was a hot day, and his dingy makeup only added to the surrealness of the encounter. We didn't stick around to analyze further. We bolted away in a hurry. Reflecting on that bizarre encounter, I often wonder about the identity of that mime. While I doubt he had sinister intentions like child abduction, his mere presence in such a remote spot, seemingly disconnected from reality, sends shivers down my spine. His madness was more unsettling than any stranger lurking in the shadows, leaving me with an eerie sense of unease long after the incident. Around 14 years ago, when I was merely 12 years old, my family and I resided on the east side of an Australian rainforest. Our home sat on a 40-acre property surrounded by dense bushland. The property, owned by a Swiss man named Hans, was a tranquil retreat, albeit teeming with the typical Australian wildlife that could pose serious threats. Living about a 40-minute drive from the nearest small town, we were quite secluded. The house nestled on the side of a large mountain, granting us a picturesque yet isolated existence. Trails crisscrossed our property, leading to a stream and a charming waterfall. It was idyllic yet intimidating, especially for me and my younger siblings, a brother and sister. Our neighbors were few and far between, each a considerable distance away. One was a delightful elderly lady who kept a watchful eye on us, a task our parents likely assigned her. The other neighbor, a middle-aged man and his family, caused us constant annoyance by disrupting the natural flow of the stream that bordered our properties. In our remote abode, unexpected visitors were a rarity. So when a man in a utility vehicle arrived unannounced one day, I instinctively knew something was amiss. I alerted my father, who confronted the stranger. A bit of background on my dad: he's as tough as they come, having lost a leg in a motorcycle accident during his youth, and possessing a no-nonsense demeanor honed in the rough streets of Sydney. The man, whom my dad referred to as John, claimed to have found our neighbor deceased and proposed moving her body to facilitate the police investigation. Sensing something amiss, my dad urged him to contact the authorities immediately. Later, the police arrived, but the matter seemed to resolve itself, with no further action required. However, John's subsequent visits cast a shadow of discomfort over our household. Despite my dad's explicit instructions to stay away, John persisted, unnerving us with his intrusive behavior. Tensions reached a boiling point when my dad caught him attempting to enter our house through a bathroom window. A confrontation ensued, and John fled into the night, leaving us shaken but resolute. Weeks passed without incident, until one day our mailbox lay in ruins, a clear message of John's lingering presence. This act of vandalism confirmed our suspicions, prompting my dad to report the incident to the police once more. But the strangest twist came when John resurfaced as a teacher aide at my school, now under the alias Gregory. Recognizing him instantly, I was consumed by a flood of unsettling thoughts. Had he been deceiving us all along? Was he involved in our neighbor's demise? The encounter left me deeply unsettled, prompting my dad to issue a stern warning: if John ever returned, we were to remain vigilant and report him immediately. The saga of John, or Gregory, served as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows, even in the serene backdrop of our rainforest home. About a year or two ago, my partner, his cousin, and his cousin's friend embarked on a 3 to 4 day hiking trip. Our plan was to cover about 15 miles each day and camp out at night. However, we quickly realized that we were unprepared for the weight of our packs. The first day was a struggle, and the exhaustion hit us hard, highlighting just how out of shape we were. As we set up camp for the night, my boyfriend's cousin mentioned seeing flashlights and hearing voices nearby, which unnerved us, considering how isolated we were on the trail. It was a creepy encounter, to say the least. The following day, we resumed our hike, but progress was slow, and it became apparent that we wouldn't cover the distance we had hoped for. To make matters worse, my boyfriend began complaining about his foot, which had turned black from bruising caused by his boots on the downhill sections. We faced the daunting task of reaching the nearest road to get back to our car. After what felt like an eternity of navigating with a map, and even crossing a river, we finally reached a road. However, finding our way back to the car presented another challenge. Just when we were feeling desperate, a pickup truck pulled over, offering assistance. They scrutinized us before suggesting they'd only take the Gurmey. Despite our discomfort and the sight of empty beer cans in their truck, my boyfriend and his cousin decided to accept the offer, armed with hatchets just in case. Left by the roadside with my friend, we couldn't shake off a sense of unease. What if they don't come back? I voiced my concern, prompting my friend to memorize their license plate, a smart move, indeed. Thankfully, they returned safely with our car, recounting a nerve-wracking journey with the reckless drivers. While the hike was a failure, we were grateful to be alive. The thought of what might have happened if I had joined them in their car still sends shivers down my spine.